Girivaradari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare. So this morning we'll continue reading from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrit on chapter 5. So I will start reading. Abe began to think seriously about writing Vaishnava literature. His spiritual master had seemed very pleased and had told the editor of The Harmonist, whatever he writes, publish it. Business profits, if he knew somehow, expand them, could go for printing books in English, as his spiritual master had said. If you ever get money, print books. Certainly the Gaudiya Math was not going to do it. Kunja Bihari had sold Bhaktisiddhanta's printing press to offset his legal expenses. No, Abe would have to continue on his own, maintaining his business and simultaneously trying to write and publish. And that was also the prescription of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. It is better that he is living outside your company. When the time comes, he will do everything himself. It was in 1939 that Abe wrote Introduction to Gita-Upanishad. It was a short piece, but it signaled his intention to take on the task of one day translating Bhagavad Gita into English with commentary. Of course, there were already many commentaries in English, but most of them had been written by impersonalists or others who had not delivered the original spirit of the Gita. The spirit of Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, hearing Bhagavad Gita directly from Lord Krishna. Abe knew, however, that he could present Bhagavad Gita in the proper spirit by writing an English commentary based on the teachings of Lord Chaitanya and the disciplic succession. So he began. Whenever he could make time, he would write. Although a strict grammarian could find fault in his English composition, his meaning was always clear. In his introduction, Abe reflected on the time when, as a young schoolboy, he had attended a lecture, Vidya Ratna, the jewel of education. The theme of the lecture had been that God does not exist and could not exist. If there were God, he would certainly have appeared on earth to put an end to all religious rivalry. But since God had not obliged man in this way, we would banish all thought of his existence from our minds. The audience, Abe explained, consisting only of so many young boys, did not delve deeply into the subject matter of the lecture, yet the majority, impressed by the arguments, carried away lofty ideas of godlessness and thus became agnostics at home. Abe had not been satisfied with the agnostic conclusion. Because I had been trained by my father to be engaged in the worship of Sri Sri Radha Govinda. But as a result of the Vidyaratna lecture, I was experiencing some mental conflict between agnosticism and the existence of Godhead. Later, having heard from his spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, Abe understood that the personality of Godhead exists in every sphere of activity. But we do not have the eyes to see him, Abe wrote. Even the Lord personally manifests himself on earth. The quarreling mundaners will not stop their fighting and look upon Godhead or his representative due to ignorance. This is the birthright of the individual soul by the grace of God. Bhagavad Gita is the true jewel of education. And in the Gita, Lord Krishna declares to the fighting people on earth, here I am, do not quarrel. The agnostic who had spoken of the jewel of education had been blinded by the jewel and therefore could not see and appreciate the personality of Godhead. Thus he had gone on to convince others to become so-called jewels also. Following his spiritual master, Abe displayed an aggressive spirit for confronting all opponents of pure theism. In responding to his spiritual master's order to develop into an English preacher, Abe was not simply making neutral, scholarly presentations. He was willing and ready to fight, whether against modern agnostics or Vaishnavism's old traditional enemy, Mayavad impersonalism. Should I stop there, Mataji?
Yes, Mataji, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Sure.
It's such a lovely reading because it actually ties in with today's text as well. So today we will be, I'm just going to share screen again. Sorry, I'm just looking for the text, which I can't find. Sorry, 1 minute. I'm just going to try and bring up the Srimad Bhagavatam text. Woo. Thank you. My son just helped me again. We'll start with our invocation prayers. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnana Jana Shalakaya Chaksur Unmilitam Yena Tasme Sri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastha Bhutale Srimati Janananda Goswami Iti Namine. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastha Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunivari Pashtita Deshatarine. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So today we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 19, Text 37. So 4:19:37. And we'll start with the shlok. So Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Let's start reading the shlok. Bhavan Padvitratam Iha Bhatirno Dharmam Jananam Samaya Nurupam Vena Pacharat Avaluktam Adya Taddehato Vishnu Kalasi Vanya Bhavan Paritratum Iha Bhatirno Dharmam Jananam Samaya Nurupam Vena Pacharat Avaluktam Adya Taddehato Vishnu Kalasi Vanya Bhavan Paritratum Iha Vatirno Dharmam Jananam Samaya Nurupam Vena Pacharat Adya Taddehato Vishnu Kalasi Vanya. Would anyone like to recite the shlok?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhu.
Bhavan Paritratum Iha Dharmam Jananam Samayanurupam Vina Pachara Dabaluptam Matya Taddehato Vishnu Kalashi Vanya. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Would anyone else like to recite?
Hare Krishna Mataji, I must try.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Bhavan Puritrato Miha Bhatirno Dharmam Jananam Shamayanurupam Vina Pacharada Voluktam Atya Taddehoto Vishnu Kalashi Vanya.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Bhavan Puritratu Miha Bhatirno Dharmam Jananam Shamayanurupam Vena Pacharat Avoluktam Adya Taddehato Vishnu Kalashi Vanya. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Would someone like to read the synonyms?
I'll try, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Bhavan, your majesty. Paritratum, just to deliver. Iha, in this world. Avatirna, incarnated. Dharmam, religious system. Jananam, of the people in general. Samaya Anurupam, according to the time and circumstances. Vena Apacharat, by the misdeeds of King Vena. Avaluptam, almost vanished. Adya, at the present moment. Tat, his. Dehata, from the body. Vishnu, of Lord Vishnu. Kala, part of a plenary portion. Asi, you are. Vainya, O son of King Vena. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O King Prithu, son of Vena, you are the part and parcel expansion of Lord Vishnu. Due to the mischievous activities of King Vena, religious principles were almost lost. At that opportune moment, you descended as the incarnation of Lord Vishnu. Indeed, for the protection of religious principles, you have appeared from the body of King Vena. Would someone like to read the purport?
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
The way in which Lord Vishnu kills the demons and protect faithful is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 4.8. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavani yuge yuge. In order to deliver the pious and to annihilate miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion, I advent myself millennium after millennium. In two hands, Lord Vishnu always carries a club and a chakra to kill demons, and his other two hands he holds conch shells and lotus to give protection to his devotees. When his incarnation is present on this planet or in this universe, the Lord kills the demons and protects his devotees simultaneously. Sometimes Lord Vishnu appears in his person as Lord Krishna or Lord Rama. All of these appearances are mentioned in Shastras. Sometimes he appears as Shaktavesha Avatara like Lord Buddha. As explained before, these Shaktavesha Avataras are incarnations of Vishnu's power invested in a living entity. Living entities are also part and parcel of Lord Vishnu, but they are not as powerful. Therefore, when a living entity descends as an incarnation of Vishnu, he is specially empowered by the Lord. When King Prithu is described as an incarnation of Lord Vishnu, it should be understood that he is Shaktavesha Avatara, part and parcel of Lord Vishnu, and is specifically empowered by him. Any living being acting as an incarnation of Lord Vishnu is thus empowered by Lord Vishnu to preach the bhakti cult. Such a person can act like Vishnu and defeat demons by arguments and preach the bhakti cult exactly according to the principles of Shastra. As indicated in Bhagavad Gita, whenever we find someone extraordinary preaching the bhakti cult, we should know that he is specially empowered by Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna. As confirmed in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya 7.11, Krishna Shakti Vinana He Tara Pravartana. One cannot explain the glories of holy name of Lord without being specifically empowered by him. If one citizens or find I think if one if one criticizes or finds fault with such an empowered personality, one is to be considered an offender against Lord Vishnu and is punishable. Even though such offenders may dress as Vaishnavas with false tilaka and mala, they are never forgiven by the Lord if they offend a pure Vaishnava. There are many instances of this in Shastras. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you.
Thank you so
Hare
much.
Krishna.
I'm just going to stop sharing here. Lovely. So what a powerful purport, isn't that, from Srila Prabhupada? So we find that again. I'm going to close that. Okay, lovely. So basically what we have here is, if we have to look at our recap, if we recap what's happened in the previous text, we find that Lord Indra had interrupted King Prithu's horse sacrifice. That 100th horse sacrifice could not be done. And Lord Indra used very devious means to achieve this. And we've learned that these devious means will in the future destroy the clear path of religious life. So it is from here, from this point, that irreligious systems were introduced. And Lord Indra was basically afraid of losing his position as king of the demigods. But King Prithu did not have that intention of being the king of the demigods, because his intention was purely looking at the well-being of his citizens. That's what he wanted. Now, the priests performing the yagna, they were not pleased. They were quite angry. So they had decided that what they would do is they would use special mantras that were never used before, and they will bring Lord Indra before them. And when Lord Indra was before them, they wanted to cast him into the fire. So that now at this point, Lord Brahma appears. And he says, no, you cannot kill Lord Indra, because he is as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's a powerful assistant of the Lord. And he reminded them that the yagna was being performed to please the demigods, right? So Lord Indra is the king of the demigods. So if they want him to please the demigods, they have to please the king of the demigods as well. So Lord Brahma told them, stop the yagna, and he reminded King Prithu that both Lord Indra and King Prithu are the parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he told King Prithu, don't be angry with Lord Indra. So it brings us now to today's shlok. And as I said, another powerful purport by Srila Prabhupada. So many points in there. But today what we'll do is we'll focus on, is Krishna partial or impartial? And this, the talk of demons. So where are the demons that we need to be aware of? And how can we overcome these demons? So I'd like to start with a conversation that I had with a 90-year-old man, a very polite man. He knew that I was Hare Krishna. And we spoke a little bit about Krishna consciousness. And then he mentioned that he does not believe in God. And I was really surprised, but I didn't show him my emotions. But I was just thinking, my goodness, you're 90 years old and you've had such a good chance to make something out of this life, to perfect your lifetime, because this is such a rare life form. But I'm thinking, this lifetime has been wasted. So naturally, I asked him, why is it that you don't believe in God? And then he had mentioned that he had fought in the World War and he had witnessed lots of horrific killings. His good friends were killed. And he said, where was God? God never favored us. God never let us win. So this sort of thinking also resonated with another 80-year-old lady that I spoke to. And she had said that when she was in her 30s, she had miscarried her baby. So she lost her unborn baby. And she said, where was God? How come he didn't favor my innocent baby? So these are just two examples of many in the world. And the question now arises, is God, Krishna, fair to some? And is he unfair to others? Or in other words, is Krishna partial or impartial? I mean, even when we read in the purport today, we know that Krishna in his four-handed form as Lord Vishnu, right? He has a conch shell and a lotus flower. And we know with that conch shell, he had actually touched the forehead of Dhruv Maharaj. But also in his hands, a chakra and a club, which are used to kill the miscreants. Vinashaya cha duskritam. So it may appear that the Lord is partial to his devotees. Paritranayam sadhunam. So is Krishna partial or is he impartial? So let's look a little bit more into it. We know that Krishna is transcendental. So when we try to answer this question of whether he is partial or impartial, when we try and understand it from a material perspective, our answer will be incomplete and incorrect. And today from reading from Lilamrit, this had come as well, having that material perspective. So it's simply because our intelligence, our senses are imperfect. We can't understand and unravel simple material issues. For example, when COVID had hit, that microscopic virus created chaos in the world. Millions of people had died and people's lifestyles had changed. But our so-called leading scientists and our leading medical professionals were left totally bewildered. They were confused. So if we conditioned souls can't understand the material issues, how can we possibly understand that which is spiritual? So trying to understand Krishna, who is completely spiritual, is an impossible task for us from a material perspective. People try to understand spiritual topics from a material perspective, but it's totally incorrect. Like if we had to look at the Bhagavad Gita, if you look at text 247, Karmani Ivadhikarasthya, you have the right to perform your prescribed duty. And very often people who are strongly engaged in self-gratification, strongly engaged in working hard, they claim, I am listening to Krishna because Krishna says, I have the right to perform my duty. But are they really following Krishna's instruction? They're failing to acknowledge the next line, which is Ma phalesu kadachana. You are not entitled to the fruits of action, right? So we're not entitled to the results of the work. It all belongs to Krishna. Everything is done for the pleasure of Krishna. It's for self-realization, not self-gratification. And the materialists understand everything to make it suit themselves, to make it convenient for them to lead a materialistic life. They adopt, as you know, the half-hen logic. You know the story about the farmer that had the hen that laid golden eggs. And the farmer thought, it's lovely getting these golden eggs, but it is really hard work maintaining this hen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the top half of the hen and just keep the bottom half. So totally illogical, isn't that so? So this is what people are doing, taking bits of information that suit them, but they're not embracing the entire knowledge that is out there, the entire knowledge that is going to give perfection of this lifetime. So fortunately for us, we know that we can turn to Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra for answers, isn't that so? It's if we have any questions, if we have any doubts, we will turn to our Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So in Shastra, if we look at Srimad Bhagavatam, if we look at 1.8.29, looking at Queen Kunti's prayers, she says no one can understand Krishna's transcendental pastimes, which appear to be human and are so misleading. And she continues to say that Krishna has no specific object of favor, nor does he have any object of envy. People only imagine that he is partial. So in the purport to that shlok, Srila Prabhupada had said that the Lord's mercy upon the fallen souls is equally distributed. And we find that also in Bhagavad Gita in 9:29, Krishna says, Samoham sarva bhutesu. The Lord is equal to all living entities. Krishna says that I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. So Krishna doesn't see one as a friend and one as an enemy. And Srila Prabhupada uses a very nice analogy. He uses the analogy of the sun. He explains that the Lord is never partial, nor is he impartial. Similarly, the sun is not partial or impartial. The sun distributes its rays to every living entity. Even the tiniest stone uses that energy or uses that light to get valuable. But the thing is, if a blind man stands with the sun rays shining right onto him, he's not going to perceive that sunlight at all, right? So similarly, people who are not willing to perceive or accept the Lord's mercy are not going to get the Lord's mercy, right? The sun's rays are open to all. The ability to receive it depends on the receiver. So a pure devotee of the Lord will render pure devotional service to the Lord. But he's not expecting any favor. He's not expecting any benediction or special mercy for himself. But the Lord is so pleased that his full mercy is open to the devotee and the devotee is accepting it. But on the other hand, we have the mixed devotee. The mixed devotees are like the ones, the suffering men, the needy men, inquisitive persons, the philosophers. They make temporary connections with the Lord. So pretty much here's a little bit of offering, my Lord. I'm going to give you some sweets and I'll give you some money. And in return, can you just answer all of my prayers, answer all my needs that I require? So all they're looking at is, how can I gratify myself and also the extended gratification? How can my family be gratified? How can the community be gratified? How can the world be gratified? So pretty much there's this bartering or trading going on, right? And when they achieved what they wanted, maybe they wanted a visa or they wanted a good spouse or good family or education, then they cut that link again from the Lord, right? So it's like, I've got what I wanted now, I don't need you anymore. But when a problem arises again, they're back again asking for some mercy. But the Lord himself always has the mercy on everybody. So the difference now between the pure devotee and the mixed devotee is that one is in a position where he receives the mercy, and the other one, even though the mercy is there upon him, he chooses not to receive it. So that partiality in receiving the Lord's mercy is relative to the recipient. It is not due to the partiality of our Lord, who we know is all merciful. It's like a child. When a child is with his parent, he's safe and he's well provided for. But if that little child decides, with my independence now, I want to enjoy separately from my parent, he doesn't want to acknowledge the parent, we will find that the child will run into some problems. But when he turns back to his parent will just welcome him and take care of him. And similarly, that's what the Lord does for us. So if we look at more Shastric evidence, we look at Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita in 1858, he says, if you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. But if, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. Isn't that profound? You will be lost. And in 7:14 of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Devi hi esha gunamaya, mama maya duratyaya. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. So we know in this material world, there's danger at every step, isn't it? Padam padam yad padam, padam padam yad vipadam na tesam. So what do we do? Krishna tells us in the same shlok in 7:14, Mam evaye prapadyante mayam itam taranti te. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So they can easily cross beyond this ocean of nescience. So if one takes shelter of Krishna without hesitation and stays under the shelter of Krishna, he can easily cross that ocean of nescience. Then for that devotee, that ocean of nescience just becomes like a little puddle of water, like what you'd find in the hoof print of a cow or a calf. The pure devotee stays in that safest position as servant of the servants of Krishna. Okay, so receiving that Lord's mercy is dependent on the recipient. It is not dependent on, people saying the Lord can be partial or impartial. And this mercy is equally distributed. It's available for all of us. Lord Krishna is all loving and he is all merciful. And in this way, he makes it easy for us to develop a relationship with him. Even a hardcore criminal, like the way we saw with Mrigari, he was a merciless hunter. We know that how he used to leave the animals, suffering. But he was transformed into such a merciful devotee that he wouldn't even harm an ant. We can also see Krishna's mercy on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Everyone there that left their body, whether they were friends or enemies, what had happened was they had attained salvation, whether they were qualified or not qualified. But because they saw, or because the Lord was present there, he mercifully gave them all salvation. They attained some place in the transcendental abode. So more Shastric evidence is from Srimad Bhagavatam in 7.1.25, where we hear that Krishna has no enemy and no friend. And when he chastises the demons, it is for their good. And when he accepts the prayers of the devotees, it's for their good. He is affected neither by prayers nor by blasphemy. So what does that tell us? The Lord is transcendental. He's not affected by what we do. We are conditioned. We consider things as good, as bad, as partial and impartial. And even in Srimad Bhagavatam in 10:16-29, when Kaliya was being severely punished, all his wives appeared before the Lord and they prayed. And what did they tell Krishna? They say, my dear Lord, you've descended to punish all kinds of demoniac living creatures. And they said that their husband Kaliya was a greatly sinful creature. And so that the punishment he was getting was well deserved, right? And then they said that your punishment of your enemies and the blessings that you give to your sons are both the same. And they said that Krishna was only thinking for the welfare of Kaliya when he was actually punishing Kaliya. So here again we see that the Lord is not partial or impartial. He is transcendental, looking out for the welfare of all of us. So whether he kills us, whether he saves us, he is correct. It is actually for the benefit for all of us, for our protection and for our well-being. Krishna's plan is always the best. And this is nicely illustrated in a story. You all know the story, but we'll go through it together, yeah? It's the story of the sweeper who took the position of the deity in Dwarkadish. So the sweeper was a very good devotee. He was very sincere. And every day he would see the Lord standing there at the altar and just smiling. And he thought, you know, so many people are coming into this temple, so many devotees. And look at the Lord. He's always standing there smiling so beautifully. But surely the Lord must be tired because, you know, he's doing this day in and day out. So he thought that he would actually swap places with the Lord. So very innocently, he prayed to Lord Dwarkadish. And Lord Dwarkadish was pleased with him and agreed that they'd swap places. But he told the sweeper, all you have to do is stand and smile. Know that I have the best plan for anyone that comes here. So they had swapped places. And the sweeper was now in the form of Lord Dwarkadish. And the first person that came in was a rich man. So the rich man enters and he took out a nice donation and he offered that to the Lord. And then he prayed. He said, my Lord, please, may my business prosper. May I get more and more money. And then he accidentally left his wallet before the altar and he walked away. The next person to come was a poor man. All he had was one coin. And he prayed to the Lord. He said, my Lord, all I have is this one coin and I offer it to you wholeheartedly. You know my family is experiencing lots of hardships, but I know your plan is always the best. So I leave everything in your hands. And then when he opened his eyes, he had seen the wallet that the rich man had left. And he thought, wow, this is a blessing from the Lord. The Lord has answered my prayers. So he took the wallet, he thanked the Lord, and he left. Next was the sailor who came in. And the sailor said, my Lord, I'm going to sail out today, and I really want to have a nice, safe, pleasant journey. Please bless me so that all goes well. And so the Lord, who is actually the sweeper now, is looking on, and he's knowing very well what is going on. And the sweeper now, in the form of the deity, is aware that the poor man had taken the wallet as well. So suddenly what had happened was the rich man entered the temple, and he came with a police officer. He pointed at the sailor and said, "That must be the man. That is the man who had stolen my wallet." The sailor was very confused. I mean, what is happening? And the police officer was there ready to arrest the sailor. And the sailor looked at the Lord and said, "My Lord, I'm innocent. What is going on?" Now the deity, who is the sweeper, remember, could not tolerate what was happening. He could not just stand and smile there. So then he just blurted out, "The sailor is innocent. It is the poor man who took the wallet." And so the sailor was really pleased, and he thanked the Lord. So that night, the real Dwarkadish, the real Lord Dwarkadish came. And the sweeper was so excited to tell the Lord how he had performed a good deed. So the sweeper thought that the Lord is going to be very pleased with him. It turned out to be a bit different. So the sweeper said, "My Lord, I thought it would be easy just standing there and smiling, but that was a hard job." And then he related the whole incident about the rich man and what had happened, with the poor man and the sailor. And the Lord looked at him and said, "Why did you not just stick with the plan? It just goes to show that you have no faith in me. Do you think that I do not understand the hearts of those that come here?" And the Lord explained that the donation that the rich man gave was all stolen money. The rich man was only giving a fraction of his big amount of money. And in return, the rich man wanted unlimited money. And then the single coin that was offered by the poor man was the only money that he had, but he gave it with full faith, depending on the Lord. And the sailor, yes, he did not do anything wrong, but if he sailed out that night, he was sure to die because the seas were going to be really rough. So here we see how the Lord has a good plan for everybody. And the moral of the story is, unfortunately, generally what happens is most people, they don't have faith in the Lord's plans. We perceive the Lord's plans as favorable, as unfavorable, but Krishna knows what is best for us. The devotee accepts the Lord's plans, irrespective of whether it's good or not good. The devotee knows that his only position is to serve the Lord, to be the servant of the Lord. So now, if Krishna is all merciful, it means that he's merciful to the demons as well, isn't that so? Am I right or wrong? Hare Krishna? Is Krishna
Right.
to demons as well?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, correct.
Yes. Thank you. So there's many pastimes we know where Krishna kills the demons. And one common one is where Putna is killed. And we know when he kills the demons, they are actually getting a higher position. So Putna came as a very loving mother, offering Krishna poisonous milk. Krishna is all cognizant. He knew what Putna was up to, but still he accepted that milk so nicely. But what did Krishna do? He sucked the life out of her. But Putna was put into a high position. She was made the nurse mother. She was made the mother of Krishna. So by being killed by Krishna, it's only a great fortune. The Lord is absolute. His so-called acts of violence or non-violence are all transcendental. There's no difference in those acts of the Lord. So therefore, pure devotees of the Lord, they don't make that distinction of the Lord's blessings or the Lord's anger. Everything is transcendental. So yes, the demons do benefit from the Lord's mercy. Now, in this day and age, we also are encountering many demons. Those demons are appearing before us. They may not be appearing in that monster-like form with 100 heads and 1,000 arms and horns and whatever. These demons are actually living amongst us. They are looking ordinary. They look like you and me. And believe it or not, we are all interacting with them. So who am I referring to? I am referring to the people that work strongly to oppose God consciousness, to oppose Krishna consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada, he encountered many such individuals. And one commonly spoken about is actually Mr. N. And we find that when we, it's in the books, Prabhupada, Messenger of the Supreme Lord, and also in Srila Prabhupada, Leelamrit. So when Mr. N was involved, he just made it really difficult for Srila Prabhupada to access the land for Sri Sri Radha Ras Bihari in Bombay. So Srila Prabhupada sometimes compared Mr. N to the demon Kamsa. We know that Kamsa had repeatedly sent those minor demons to try to kill Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada says, similarly, Mr. N was sending the lawyers, the hoodlums, friends, those demoniac agents to interrupt or cause a disturbance to the service to Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada is the servant of Krishna. He was always absorbed in fighting for Krishna. He was always vigilant. He was always militant. And Mr. N would bluff and frighten the devotees there, causing them to back down. But Srila Prabhupada did not back down. He held his ground. He naturally took to the fight because Krishna and Krishna's mission were being challenged. He knew that Krishna is the supreme protector and that nobody could oppose Krishna's will. But just like how Krishna's parents were in transcendental anxiety when Krishna was dancing on the heads of Kaliya, similarly, Srila Prabhupada was in transcendental anxiety for the safety of Sri Sri Radha Ras Bihari. So Srila Prabhupada's mood was that of to protect the deities and to protect the Krishna consciousness movement. So Mr. N accused Srila Prabhupada and the devotees of even being connected with the CIA, believe that. So Mr. N made accusations like, you people are calling yourselves the owners of the land, but all you do is cause such a great disturbance. You here up at 4 a.m. disturbing people. So once even Mr. N, he even threatened to break the temple and to remove the deities himself. But that week, when he made that kind of statement, he suffered a very severe heart attack. And 2 weeks later, he left his body. But the drama did not end. Next in the picture was his wife, Mrs. N. And she continued the battle. She continued to threaten Srila Prabhupada, right? And she's tried to delay the dealings to access that land. But after a while, she gave in and she apologized to Srila Prabhupada. She cried. She asked him for forgiveness and she promised to do whatever Srila Prabhupada wanted. So what a change, from one extreme to the other. But do you know what Srila Prabhupada did? He looked at her compassionately and he said, you are just like my daughter. Don't worry, I will take care of you. I will see that all your needs for the rest of your life will be taken care of. So that's the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. Even though she had caused so many problems and she created so many offenses, still Srila Prabhupada lovingly accepted her as a daughter. And in the same way, when we surrender to our spiritual master, irrespective of who we are, our spiritual master accepts us and helps us to make our life successful. So the Lord is very pleased with a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada. So we must always be on guard that we don't offend these devotees because they have dedicated their lives in the propagation of this Krishna consciousness movement. And this point is also highlighted in today's purport as well. So we shouldn't criticize or find fault with any empowered personality, well, with any devotee. And one who criticizes and finds fault is to be considered an offender against Lord Vishnu and is punishable. This is in the purport. So basically, one is committing the mad elephant offense, causing destruction of all that is good, causing destruction of our Bhakti Lata Beach. So in another incident with the Bombay land and the temple, there were complaints, you know, how the Hare Krishnas are belonging to the CIA. So an officer came in to investigate, and His Holiness Krishna Goswami took the officer for a tour, and he showed him Srila Prabhupada's quarters, and they walked around. And then the officer said, you know, I'm confused. Why is it that we are actually searching this Hare Krishna land? And His Holiness Krishna Goswami said, I guess it's because there's so many foreigners here. And the inspector said, but there are many foreigners in Holiday Inn. So why aren't we searching there? And His Holiness Krishna Goswami said, you give me the answer for that. I'm just paraphrasing. Okay? And then the officer said, at Holiday Inn, they eat meat, they have intoxicants, they have illicit sex, and they gamble. But no one bothers about them. Yeah. But here, you don't eat meat, you don't have fish and eggs, you don't have intoxicants, you don't have illicit sex, and you don't gamble. So you go around broadcasting loudly to people that you don't do all of these things. And this just confuses people. They are suspicious. How come you all look so happy? How come you are all looking so peaceful? So people are comfortable with sense gratification, right? But here you are giving up the sense gratification, announcing it, telling others. And this is why people are so disturbed and they are so suspicious. And that is why we are investigating here. So in the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam, in 3.18.5, Srila Prabhupada states demons are always anxious to have a godless society for their sense gratification. I mean, till now people sometimes say, you Hare Krishnas, you don't eat meat, you don't take intoxicants, you don't have illicit sex, you don't gamble. Whoa, your life is boring. Where's the fun in your life? Do you get anyone telling you that? Has anyone experienced that?
Hare Krishna Mataji, yes.
Quite often.
Yes, and you know, and sometimes we look at them and go, you know, where's the fun in your life, really, isn't it?
Especially at the work also, like, you know, when the colleagues see us that, you know, we don't do all these things. And then I remember my colleague asking me when I was carrying Nandini that, you know, don't you feel like eating something like, you know, the non-veg? And don't you have craving at this point in time? Because, you know, you're expecting. Then I said, no, I don't. So, yeah, all these are the misconceptions in their brain. What to do?
Exactly. Misconceptions out there, yes. Thanks for sharing that, Mataji. Yeah, so they don't realize that the lifestyle we've adopted, the lifestyle that we follow is one of a higher taste. It's a higher taste. We get so much joy, so much of happiness, something that they don't realize. I'm just remembering something now, how I met a teenager whilst doing book distribution. And, telling him, he asked, like, what are you all doing? And I explained to him, and he goes, nah, I get all of that from weed. And I said, you see those boys in the front? It was my son and 2 devotees from Mantra Lounge. And he goes, yeah, they look really happy. And I said, this is what they are practicing, and they are getting a higher taste, a higher happiness than what you're getting from weed. And that totally shocked him. It's just because people have become so conditioned thinking that intoxicants can give them that higher pleasure. So yeah, so we know, I'm just moving on now. So Srila Prabhupada, we know that he was victorious in getting the Juhu temple built. And now we know what a great temple that is now. So following in his footsteps to keep the ISKCON temples as His Holiness Kadambakanan Swami. And as we know, he recently left his body. So his guru, His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami, gave a very, very touching homage. He was referring to His Holiness Kadambakanan's abdominal scar. You see, when Maharaj was trying to protect the Krishna Balaram temple, there was a time where he was shot in his abdomen. And he had got a scar or a wound that was about 20 centimeters in length. That's quite a big one, isn't it? So His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami had described that scar as a decoration of honor in protecting the Krishna Balaram temple when it was attacked by the Gundas. And he had said that His Holiness Kadambakanan Swami had nearly lost his life in that incident. So we see that in an attempt to promote Krishna consciousness, the devotees are confronted with unfavorable people, with demoniac natures or tendencies who try to stop this Krishna consciousness. But Srila Prabhupada had said that nothing external can destroy this movement. It's the internals that will destroy it. So he says basically that ISKCON cannot be destroyed from the outside, but only from the inside. So here he's referring to all of us within ISKCON. I mean, how can this happen? I mean, devotees are wonderful people. They're compassionate. Yeah. They're all loving. They love everybody. But we are all still conditioned souls. We're not perfect. Srila Prabhupada says we're imperfect on a perfect path. Isn't that so? On this perfect path, we're receiving the knowledge. So when we speak about all of us having not so good tendency, it's like having demons within us. What are those demons I'm referring to? Can somebody explain that? What are those demons within us?
Hare Krishna Mataji, the demons are all the lust
Greed, lust.
in us.
What are the
all
demons?
the-
Maybe a well example. What
Yeah.
are the demons in us? You know we have demons in us.
Yes. So Haribol, you all know it very well. And I'm just
Yeah.
repeating it. So,
Gossiping, Mataji.
sorry, Prabhu?
Gossiping,
Gossiping.
blaming others,
Absolutely.
blaming others.
So we are all carrying these bags of anathas, some big bags, some small bags, right? So these anathas, when you look at the word anatha means that which is precious, that which is valuable and meaningful. But anatha refers to that which is unwanted. So Srila Prabhupada says he defines it as the unwanted things within us. So yes, lust, anger, and greed, like you mentioned, that's like the royal road to hell. And then there's pride, there's illusion, there's envy. And Prabhu, as you mentioned, the gossiping, all the prajalpa, right? It's just that harshness, the ignorance, the envy, and the mischievous natures that can come up. So we need to guard against it. So with this, with all these anathas, that false ego grows, like we had seen with King Vena, right? He reached the extreme where he wanted the worship of the Lord to stop. And what did he want? He wanted people to see him as the supreme personality of Godhead. But if we are serious about our spiritual life, then we need to be very, very careful. We need to take precautionary measures to get rid of these anathas. This is anatta nivritti. And we can see how devastating it was for King Dena. Right, he was committing spiritual suicide. We need to guard against this. And we should be very careful on the spiritual path. Yes, we are on the right path, but we can't let anything disturb us. This jewel of devotional service that we have, it must be protected. Just like how a jewel, if someone has a precious jewel, they will keep it very safely. They'll protect it. They'll keep it away from the rogues, away from the thieves. Similarly, we need to protect this jewel of devotional service. So how can we get rid of these anathas? We simply have to turn to Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And in this way, we're going to disconnect from the anathas and we reconnect with Lord Krishna, knowing our positions to be the servants of the servants of the servants. So fortunately for us, Srila Prabhupada has set out a nice program, right? So to keep us engaged in Krishna consciousness. So, you know, the morning starting with Mangal Arati, chanting, Srimad Bhagavatam class. And we have so many books that are available, especially Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Srila Prabhupada is no ordinary person. He's an exalted personality. He is accepted as the Shakti Avesh avatar. He's empowered by the divine energy of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada did what nobody else could do. He spread Krishna consciousness worldwide. And he translated and wrote so many books. He traveled the world over. He spread Krishna consciousness. He established about 108 temples, and he did so much more to keep us all in Krishna consciousness. But he still presented himself as the servant of the servant of the servant. That's the position of a Vaishnava. Gopi Patu Padakamalayo Dasa Dasa Anudas. Even King Prithu was a Shakti Avesh avatar. He was an exemplary king. And he invested his power to rule the kingdom. And Srila Prabhupada invested his power to spread Krishna consciousness worldwide. Srila Prabhupada was exemplary in his preaching. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in Antya 7:11, it's confirmed that unless one is blessed with Krishna Shakti, the energy of Krishna, one cannot spread the chanting of the holy name of the Lord all over the world. But Srila Prabhupada was blessed with Krishna Shakti, and he was able to spread the Sankirtan movement throughout the world. And today in the purport, we read that one has to be empowered by Lord Vishnu to preach the Bhakti cult. Such a person can act like Lord Vishnu and defeat demons by arguments and preach the Bhakti cult exactly according to the principles of Shastra. Srila Prabhupada was empowered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he could therefore give Krishna consciousness to all of us, whether we are qualified or whether we are not qualified. Okay, so now we just look at a summary. Sorry, I know I'm a bit over time. I'm sorry. But we'll just do a quick, brief summary and see how we can apply this to our lives as well. So first of all, we looked at, is the Lord partial or impartial? And it's been established that the Lord is transcendental and his plan is good for all of us. And as devotees, you know, it does not mean we are in total happiness 24/7. We all undergo some sort of reversals, you know. It could be health issues, it could be finance, it could be family issues. It's just the nature of the material world, you know. And the devotee, though, looks at all of these reversals as a small price to pay for gaining the personal association with the Lord. So we may face these reversals in life, but we need to accept it as the mercy of the Lord. He creates a particular situation for us, for our own self-purification. It's only for us. He induces us to let go of this material world. He's breaking our attachment to this material world so that we can eventually go back home, back to Godhead. So whether Krishna is blessing us or whether Krishna kills us, it's still the mercy. It's his mercy coming through. And in order to disconnect from these anathas, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that before chanting, we should pray sincerely. Pray for the strength to cast out all of these anathas, all these unfavorable tendencies. And by doing this regularly and chanting sincerely and following the 4 regulative principles, these demoniac tendencies within us will be killed, they'll be destroyed, and there'll be purification of the heart. So this chanting and following the 4 regulative principles actually creates a strong foundation. It's from this strong foundation that we can build on. You know, if the foundation of a building is not strong, that building is going to collapse. Similarly, if we don't create a strong foundation, what's going to happen is we're going to have problems along our spiritual path. So if we create the strong foundation of chanting, following the 4 regulative principles, we can become first-class devotees. We'll be happy in this life and we'll be happy in the next. But a devotee also is not miserly with all of this knowledge that he gets. He wants to share it with others. How can we share it with others in this Kali Yuga? How can we share it with people who have never heard about Krishna, who don't know about Krishna consciousness? Can I have a few examples of how we can take this message to others?
Hare Krishna Mataji, by your own example,
Yes,
showing others that we are different from them,
that's
so
very
that
nice.
people can appreciate. So we have to rise to that occasion to make us distinct and different from others who are immersed in material enjoyment. As you have pointed out, that they think that we are living in a situation which is boring, as against we are in a superior happiness than theirs.
Yes,
So with our example, the devotees can exemplify it to others.
that's very nice, Prabhu. Thank you for sharing that. So yes, be an example. And Srila Prabhupada or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given this unique weapon. It's not a club, it's not a chakra, but it's the Sankirtan movement. So being that example, let's get out there to everybody. You know, through the Sankirtan movement, people out there are thirsty for the spiritual science. You know, when you go out like on book distribution, people go, thank you so much for coming. I'm so happy that I've met you. This is the kind of knowledge that I'm looking for. You know, this is what we hear from people. They just don't know where to look. So Sankirtan, Harinam Sankirtan, book distribution, prasadam distribution, making ourselves available to people out there. Because as I said, people are thirsty for this knowledge. Having outreach programs like the Mantra Lounge in Hamilton and the Loft in Auckland, you know, and there's many, many other examples also of getting out there, reaching people. We got to make ourselves available and share what we have. So I just want to conclude now with some words that were on the final recorded message from His Holiness Kadamba Kanan Swami. And I'm just going to read it. I've transcribed some of the words, okay? So he said, follow the 4 regulative principles to become free from the age of Kali. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave the Yuga Dharma to chant the holy name and added his mercy and made what is difficult easy. Chant minimum 16 rounds and 4 regulative principles. You are all fortunate because you have all come in touch with the Vaishnavas. As a result, you took up the process of bhakti, chanting Hare Krishna and following the 4 regulative principles. Who in this world is prepared to live like that? By Srila Prabhupada and his followers' inspiration, we are ready, walking a heroic path, and everything is blessed on the way. What a wonderful life you have been given. Through recordings, words, I'll continue to inspire all to stay on this path, through thick and thin. Through all the struggle, do not waver. You have the greatest treasure, never forget. Where in this world is there such wealth? The wealthiest man in the world is a pauper. You have the real wealth. Treasure it, relish it, hold it close. Don't become slack, neglectful. Hold it close. Chant every day, hear every day. Carve these principles in stone. Let them be every day. Your life would be wonderful. And at the end, go back to Godhead. Swami Prabhupada said, just give this one life to me. Everything will be most amazing. Stay on the path. Don't get lost. His Holiness Kadamba Khan and Swami ki jai.
Yeah.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
So thank you everyone for your kind attention. Thank you so much for bearing and tolerating me. And I've gone over time. I really apologize for that. So if there are any comments or questions, maybe we can just
Hare-
take a couple of minutes for that.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare
At
Krishna.
that time passed up, we didn't realize it is overtime. It's all so pleasant and
Hare-
so cheerful and so much pleasure in it. Yes, yeah, well, and it delighted the day. It starts and the sun is up now. Very good day for us. Thank you so much for enlightening the whole nature of our devotees' life, right from the morning to the till the end of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your encouraging words, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Okay. If there are no more comments,
Hare Krishna Mataji,
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the very nice class. Particularly, you have gone over time, but as you know, in transcendental world, there is no time. So we were so much engrossed with your so much good information that we got absorbed, and how the time passed on, we didn't never realized. So this is the beauty of the transcendental thing. When we enjoy it, we should never be bothered by the material conditions. And this all happens to us, and hope by the message you have given that we have become, we should tolerate in this material world, these material things. With the knowledge of the transcendental knowledge, we can overcome it, and we can perform our material responsibilities properly, as well as we can go back, prepare for the next life and go back to the body. Thank you very much for your nice class.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful day. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Vancha kalpatrubhyascha
Patitanam
pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnavamriti
Jai.
Our grace Saradiya
Saradiya
Mataji.
Mataji.
Jai.
Jai.
Srila
Lord
Prabhupada ki
Premanande.
jai.
Jai.